thought Drix was going to come in and sub. And Drix is, after all, one of the subs for Rise.
Can we have him anyway?
No, but you know what? But now we get to see the IGL. We get to see the GOAT Fran actually play, okay? And come on, we can't be disappointed with that, can we, Jacob?
It has nothing to do with Franchis. Has nothing to do with anybody.
You just want to see Drix.
Other than Drix, exactly. When I was in his stream talking to him, I was so excited. Obviously, I have that history. Honestly, a very small percentage of where I'm at today, not only in Gears casting, but in general, goes to that man Drix. So I give him one of the biggest shout outs ever. That's why I'm always excited to see him play. But, coming into this one, there's a player to watch. Who is that player to watch?
It's got to be Abolics. Come on. It has to be Abolics. He is just, he's a beast. He's an animal, right? I don't even know if he's human, all right? 33% of team kills. He is definitely carrying his weight. When he pops off, the team is doing well. Of course, he is the X factor, if you will. A lot of teams have him, but Abolics is the X factor, of course, for the side of Oxygen. And, his stats, 1.54 KDA. It's not that crazy. It's really not, but it's still in the positive. And I think one thing about Abolics is, again, he's that playmaker. What else about Abolics can we say?
I think he's going to be that leader. He's the most experienced player on that roster. And you can kind of see, obviously, the stats don't tell the full story, but if you know how to read the stats with the history of the player and how the team performs, that 1.54 KD with that -9 is actually pretty impressive because he's kind of that tip of the spear style player. He's that experienced leader that I talked about. So he has to kind of lead by example from the team. So if he's going to be that power weapon player, that support player, that slayer that the team needs him to be, he kind of has to set his team up for those positions. And I'm going to be looking at him to kind of lead the charge against this Rise squad. Unfortunate enough, I did see it already this season. I don't think it was on a pro league. It might have been an E-Day to where Mars was up 4-0.
Yes,
this
that was
squad
E-Days.
completed a 5-round comeback. I'm just hoping that this new look, now known as Oxygen Esports, they're able to kind of close out these rounds and not let those things slip through, because that was a big blunder. That was a massive blunder.
Yeah, that was, and you know what? Maybe showing that the younger team, they still have a lot of heavy hitters on that roster, but maybe, the nerves getting the best of them. It was E-Days after all, but they were playing against Rise. I don't know. You have to have that composure to close it out. There's several teams actually in the Pro League currently who struggle to close out series, and that's always going to bite them in the butt. Let's look at our pick and ban, see the maps we're rolling with. I want to see if Training Grounds is in the mix. So that was actually banned out from Oxygen. Fair enough. And the reason why is because that was the map that they were up 4-1 and ended up losing to Rise, who ended up making that incredible comeback. So it's good to see. So let's get that out of the way. Something just wasn't working. So we'll get a little bit of Harbor. We'll get some Vascar, and we'll get Asylum, which Asylum is an interesting one to be the tiebreaker if we get to that point. I feel like Rise has been dropping the ball on Asylum for the past couple of weeks now. They've been doing this weird thing. Even when they have the lead, Jacob, they place a long shot or a power weapon up top on streets, and they never win around once they do that. And they continue to do it, and I don't know why.
I honestly don't know why either, because honestly, you'd think they'd be more aggressive, trying to get inside, maybe even switching up the positioning of some players. But honestly, I don't understand why you go ahead and change up the strategy that's winning you, though. So I'm interested to see on Asylum, do they switch things up when they're up ahead? But we already talked about them already up against the squad. They did trail early on. The history of Rise on these maps as well, where they do have a slow start. So I'm going to be looking at Rise, honestly, to take away that curse, take away that slow start, and start off firing hot. And I do put a lot of pressures on Rushiez when it comes to those slaying categories. Even though I'm not going to put a lot of pressure on him to put up those big numbers, I am going to put that pressure on him to win the exchanges that he does come in contact with. Because we did see a couple of times early on, Identivs and a couple of these other playmaking stars from other teams were having their way with him in certain scenarios. So it's a player that I'm going to have my eye on throughout honestly the rest of the season until he retires even.
Yeah, hold on to that thought, because I want to actually go into our predictions, but I want to break Rushiez down a little bit more, maybe even add Drix into the mix, even though he's not competing tonight. For me tonight, I have to go with Rise, and the reason why is going back to your original thought process, Jacob, was, they played on E-Days, and Rise was able to beat them in pretty convincing fashion. That first one wasn't convincing because, of course, they were down 4-1, but that comeback speaks volumes, and then I believe going into that map number 2, they lost 5-0, if I'm not mistaken. So that to me shows that Rise, even on some of their worst days, is still playing at the caliber, if not the same caliber, the better caliber than that of the old Mars roster, of course, now Oxygen. So as much as I want to go with Oxygen, I think they're incredibly talented. It's still a different ballgame being in Pro League. Rise is the better team, at least in my mind. What about you?
Even though I do think if any matchup in the Pro League right now, at least within the next couple of weeks, Oxygen is going to win. It is going to be this Rise matchup, but I don't think Rise is going to let this one slip through. I do think Rise is going to take this series. Like I said, I'm going to be looking at Rushiez, but even though I have my eyes on Rushiez, it's going to really be up to Avexys and the rest of that core roster, Franchise and Icy, to kind of win those team fights around the map, because that's usually how it does play out, to where they're those three players in the fight. They're leading the charge, especially on those initial, even though I'm putting that pressure for Rushiez to win his exchanges. Their core roster that are in that team fights on initial needs to find a way to not dig themselves into a hole. And I do think this is going to be a grill test against this Oxygen Esports test to go ahead and solidify that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I think that's fair. And chat, where are you going with? You're 6-8 currently, so hopefully you make the right decision here. You're going with Rise, you're going with Oxygen, you're going with Rise. So we're all three Rise. We've been here before. We have lost before in this situation. It's always scary, I feel personally. When I would rather want somebody to go against the grain and choose the other team just to make it kind of a little bit spicier. But when we all go for the same team, it's comforting, but it's also scary, because I feel like sometimes we jinx it and we might be in some trouble. Who knows, though? It is Harbor.
Win together, lose together.
And you know what? That's the beautiful thing about it. You know, we all come together as one cohesive unit, and that's a great thing. You know, Rise has had some good victories, though, on Harbor, and I think they're going to be okay here. Remember, they beat E United on this very map. That's no easy feat.
Unfortunately, I feel like every moment of this matchup, I'm going to be a little disappointed. I'm not seeing Drix, but I'm still hoping for Rise to be able to piece this together. At least make it an interesting match. Either one of these teams kind of gets steamrolled. Avexys is going to be the player to draw first blood, and not in the fashion that we're used to, but he's quickly going to fall. Rushiez able to try to clean one up and forcing these members of Oxygen to backtrack, and I like what Morality was doing, or at least attempting to do, to try to stretch across. If I'm going to die, I'm going to force these players to backtrack to get me. Unfortunately, he was taken down early. Rise taking control of not only the initial, but this early portions of this match.
And well done, Rise. Obviously feeling very comfortable at this point in time. Let's see if they can hold on to it. One of the things that Rise has struggled with throughout Pro League, and you maybe you can say over on E-Days, different caliber, but still, Rise doesn't close out series. They have times where they lead massively only to start falling apart, and I don't know why that is. Maybe it's teams reacted to them appropriately, but I like to think that it's just Rise kind of, falling apart, if you will, but great shots from Icy. And you know what? Icy is a player who has been kind of hit and miss lately, Jacob, but when he performs well, without question, you already know Rise is going to be okay.
And I like what they're doing here. They're not necessarily going head first in towards that neutral. They're trying to use that cross-map pressure from Avexys to kind of lead this charge, but it's Rushiez. He overextends, gets caught out of position. He's on the other person's side of the map, and I do believe that's Icy and him. They were playing as a duo. They get split up, and now both of them die. So I talk about this being one of the matches where Oxygen Esports can take away from the competition, especially a team like Rise. These are those moments you got to capitalize on them. You get 2 hills now. You get the win condition on your top of the screen, but this is where you decide. Do you play for those uncontested hills, or do you try to play for a little bit more? Make Rise fight for every inch.
Yeah, and I think making Rise fight for every inch is going to be a fair decision, right? You have a couple of players who have not been holding their own as of recently. You mentioned Avexys, obviously. Rushiez has kind of been a sore spot that has been discussed over and over again. You mentioned Identives, right? One of the main players who was kind of really punishing them last time during their first Pro League match when Rebel was able to beat them. And unfortunately, Rushiez will fall in this situation, and this is looking like it's going to be trouble. Oxygen is going to win over on B, and now they're starting to pressure it onto Avexys, who gets some great Lancer shots. Abolics is gone, but you have to finish up the other one. Bit of a misroll, but still, the player from Oxygen doesn't turn around. He's going to fall on the hill. It's soon going to be broken, and I think Rise might fall apart. I hope not, Jacob.
Yep, you saw the win condition change at one point or another. Uncontested, the Swarm had it. Switch on over to Rise towards the very ending portions. Abolics gets taken out, but there's 10 seconds left, roughly. There's going to be a big battle for Zoom. The pressure's going to be put on him. The damage is going to be there, but Avexys is going to get the last laugh. And I do believe because of that, it leaves it all up to Morality. He's going to go down. And so are Oxygen Esports in round number 1. That one's going to go over to Rise. And honestly, it looked pretty decent for them. They had the 2 hills. They're able to rack up control. Oxygen answered back with 2 hills under their own control late into the game, but it had to come through uncontested. Rise did just enough to hold on to that round, but honestly, just enough. How many times can you say that actually being enough?
Yeah, I mean, just enough isn't good enough. It's just not going to cut it at this caliber, right? And, it may work against Oxygen in this series, and I think everybody kind of knows that. But for the most part, though, when you start playing against, the upper echelon of teams, it's not going to be there. And that's no disrespect to Oxygen. But, they are the new kids on the block. They have a lot to prove before they, are considered one of those top tier teams or middle of the road teams, right? And I think that's a fair assessment. Well, we head into round number 2. That first one was very shaky. And for me, that shows a lot more about Oxygen than it does Rise, because Oxygen at that point feels maybe empowered by that round. Look, they just barely lost it, Jacob. And, in my opinion, that would give me confidence as a competitor. And maybe it is. Look at off the rip. Abolics picks up 1. Of course, Icy and Friend's going to answer back. Team pickup's going to be there. Icy looking to maybe clean up and hold up a second. The dreams might be shattered early on. Oh, Icy can't make it happen. Abolics clutches it up. But some heavy losses. Both teams lose 2 players, and Oxygen will take the neutral, and Rise going to have to recover, which they seem to be doing so with Fran.
This was one of those moments right there where Icy just honestly didn't really need to up A that cover. I bet you if he watches that back, he'll agree with me there, but his teammates are easily taking that top portion of the map. Even though down low towards the hill, that does go over to Oxygen. This is the early portions, what Rise needs to do. You take this both the winch and the stern, you force these players out, and then you can decide, do I overextend, go home to the home hill, or do I try to stretch over towards that neutral hill down low and B? And because this player is still down low towards the winch, they have to worry about Abolics. So this is going to be step number 1. Flash is going off. The battle is going to start off. Damage being there. Nobody able to get taken out by Abolics, but nice attempt to come through. He did get the down on Avexys, and immediately they turn their sights on towards that neutral. Zoom is going to take a little bit of damage early on. You see that player down low and Fran getting into that pocket. That way, nobody is safe down low. The hill is going to change sides, but there's still more Rise needs to do. They don't have the win condition just yet.
And Avexys by himself, but still making good work of it. This is a tricky spot to be in. He knows he needs to pressure up, and the reason why is because Rushiez is quickly making his way over towards Charlie, and if he can gain some positioning here, he's going to be quite all right. And, well, now he's going to be living in the spawn of Oxygen, and this is going to be a great spot because, again, Rushiez can now push up freely, basically. He's going to be able to challenge morality. Zoom's going to be forced into a 1v himself, and unfortunately, Rushiez does drop off, but this is important. Rise is now delaying time, and Avexys is the reason why, and the more time you waste, the more time you keep Oxygen back, that's stopping them from pushing up, and that's stopping them from gathering points. Rise has the win condition. They're quickly about to take over the point lead, and Oxygen is going to have to make a decision. What is that decision? It seems as if to go for the overextension. They're committing 3 for it.
Yep. Already, I talked about it. That boat control from Rise. They didn't win that early initial, but they did everything right afterwards. Now they need to make sure that they at least don't lose this fight. They can fight it. They can put out the damage, but losing this fight is a definite no. Trades going off. Rushy, he's going to get 2 big kills. He's going to overextend. So now that the player's alive from Oxygen, they have to worry about him on that side of the map. He got the necessary help from Franchis. Even though he did get taken out, the rescue is there as Rise doing everything right from the post-initial to take control of this round and slowly but surely win it and put it into the books. That's going to be a 2-0 lead for Rise.
Yeah, great job from them to be able to readjust, pull an audible, if you will, keep your head on a swivel, and they did exactly that. Still, it wasn't easy. I'm not seeing Rise win these rounds cleanly, right? Oxygen is in the round, whether it be off the initial, Abolics, great initial on Winch. That's kind of like 2 times in a row for him, but it's not looking clean for Rise, and I think that's the biggest issue for me. You look at this roster, you look at the history of Rise, Jacob, and you expect them to be destroying this map, and they're simply not. Oxygen is putting up more of a fight than I was expecting, but again, that speaks volumes about Oxygen. They're playing well, and Rise has to be careful.
Yep, and this is where I'm not gonna say it because Rise is playing well, but this is where I just wish I saw a little Drix. I went ahead and sent him a message saying he got me tight. Drix got me tight.
Yeah.
I'm happy to see Rushiez performing right here. Some big kills late into the game. Big shots early on as well. It should have possibly got the chunk with the first one, but he's going to be there in the end, not only to get the revives, but allow Avexys to push up. So great way to start the round for Rise. Yet in this one, they saw it wasn't a great start in the last one. They were able to hold on and win it regardless. So now let's see what they can do with a great start. Big shots from Franchis. He's going to stagger the death from Zoom. Triple cap domination sounding off. Nice flash from Abolics, but it's not going to stun both of these members. Avexys and Ice, he's going to get the kill on 2 members simultaneously to close it out in 3-0. This is looking like a good Rise.
Yeah, that was definitely the cleanest round we've seen yet, right? The past 2 rounds have kind of been a bit back and forth, but I'm liking what I'm seeing so far, at least after that last round. Who is usually the one from Rise that plays that dock side, who fights for the neutral? I know Rushiez is normally in the 1v, but Fran is there. Has it always been Fran fighting for the neutral?
I mean, I believe they kind of went through different mixes, but it kind of has solidified at least when that one player is going down there, most of the time it has been Rushiez. That's what I'm talking about. When that fight does get lost, and it doesn't matter why it's lost up top, what happens. Sometimes it just kind of messes up with that one player down low. You don't have very many options. You're getting crossed, you're getting shotgun. That player down low doesn't want to fight you, and that's why I kind of admit it. That player down low for Hive, it's kind of solar, so you can kind of see there's that unfairness when your team does lose, to where we talk about stats don't tell the full story, but you can see it again. They did switch up. They're putting Rushiez in the front. That's something I didn't notice, and great for say that. And this is why you're in first place. I'm gonna go ahead and say it. This is why you're in first place.
And this is why I was asking, because Fran has been playing the 1v. He's been the one challenging the Bravo positioning, and Rushiez has been able to be free to kind of slay out down there on Stern, and you see the difference it makes. I like that. That's an adjustment that needed to happen. When you think about Rise during the 5v5 era, who was the front spawn? It was Rushiez, and Rushiez was a dominant front spawn. He could get those quick picks on the power weapons, especially on District. That's where they were the strongest back then when they were reciprocity, and I like this adjustment. I think Fran, during 5v5, and I was talking to Tommy, our observer, he actually had a great point. Back in 5v5, Fran was the guy to kind of be by himself. He was the playmaker, right? He was leading the troops, but you could trust him, and especially on Bunker. Remember, he was always the guy to go for the overextension. I think it's fair to put him in those 1v spots because he can handle them. He's got great smarts, great strategy, and he can read the competition like a book. Rushiez never should have been in that spot. They tried it. It hasn't been working, and them adjusting on Harbor seems to be paying dividends. That's why they have the 3-0 lead.
Now you see the tables have turned. You saw Rise being able to retake after the initial, and now you see Rise suffocating this Oxygen Esports squad, not giving up any inches. 2 downs going through before they even reach the bottom of that ramp, so that's going to make that push even harder. Talk about leading with the charge. Going to have to make sure you bait and switch the damage correctly. There's too much damage on the wrong player. Can end with an elimination instead of a down. You see Zoom's going to lead that charge. Big shots going through. Icy, though. Nice up A. Going to take out Zoom. Morality's going to fall as well. Nobody else from Oxygen was able to push up, but you know what, Rise, so that's okay. We're gonna take the fight to you.
All right, taking a fight to him. Abolics, big spot. Hits a nice shot into Avexys. That's a drop. Still have to deal with Icy. Meat showed up. Icy backs up. Even so, Rise still looking very comfortable. And with player 8 dropping, Rocky gave it his all, but you're not going to get through Franchise. Again, running that spot, playing it so well. Granted, he had help with Rushiez. And Rise will take this round in 10 seconds. You see Oxygen kind of, splitting up on the map. Player 6 is going to challenge 3, but he's going to drop off. That's going to be the round for Rise. And well done. They're up 4-0, and I'm seeing a lot of what I witnessed during E-Days, and again, that's what swayed my decision to go with Rise. I looked at that E-Days matchup and I said, then Mars, now obviously Oxygen, they just weren't ready to play Rise tonight.
I'm not going to say this Rushiez front spawn Rise makes all the difference, but you can kind of see the tone being a little different. It might be too soon to tell as well, because it is just Oxygen Esports. No shade on them, but we know they're not necessarily one of our powerhouse teams in the league so far, but honestly, you got to learn to walk before you learn to run. And Rise right now, it kind of needs to relearn those steps. So if they're looking to get back towards the top, but honestly, this also could be a little preview of what we might see here, because I know we talked about Drix subbing in. I don't think the possibility of Drix subbing in is out the window. It just might not be today. So honestly, if Drix is subbing in for this Rise squad one time or another, whether it be E-Days, whether it be Pro League down the line, these spawns would make sense for that, because you would put Drix in that 1v1 scenario. You would allow Rushiez to get into the front spawn. He is one of the main slayers, so this is looking like it's making a lot of sense. And you see the difference being made. Rushiez able to get one. The melee towards the backside. Double kill. Make that a triple kill.
There you got it.
Rushiez starting us up off.
And Jacob, look at what he can do. Rushiez never should have been put in those 1Vs. It was a strategy they tried. It wasn't working. Some were even saying, is he really able to adjust from 5v5 to 4v4? A valid question given his stats and his performances recently, but you put him with the teammates, you put him into chaotic situations, and he's going to thrive. That's where he is comfortable. It makes sense. That's what he did in 5v5. Why not have him do the same thing in 4v4? Oxygen, though, looking to fight back. They're going for the overextension. Icy's full red. He's down. That's going to be a break. So So Oxygen will have the home-to-home. Rise has netted themselves a 30-point lead, but Abolics also has that M-bar. Things could get a bit shaky here, but honestly, Rise being up 4-0, they can afford to give this round up. They're not going to. They're going to fight tooth and nail to take it back. But again, it's not the scariest thing for Rise at this point.
Yeah, it's definitely not. But right now, Rise needs to be looking for some sort of split push to go down. You can't allow that M-bar to sit freely. And the reason why is because obviously one body shot, one Lancer, couple bullets, one shotgun shot will get the down. So you split push. So don't give him every easy targets. He's going to have to focus on his side of the map, or at least for the most part, until that push comes to him. And that will lessen his options. Yeah, he's going to have wide open targets. You see the marks going through from Franchise and Co on the other side of the map, but you can already see adjustments being made. This is going to be a push coming through on one side of the map, Franchise, and I do believe that might be Rushiez, or it's actually going to be Icy. Getting inch by inch. They're able to get that main positioning over, not able to get the brick just yet on the hill, but there it goes. And you see the crossfire coming through from Rushiez on the other side of the map. And this is where Oxygen, they're going to have to attack Rushiez into spawn. And as they do that, he immediately gets that elimination, setting his eyes on the next target with the help of Avexys. They're going to solidify 4 players dead, leaving Zune all by his lonesome. Possible 5-0 victory going over to Rise, and it is going to come through. What a hot start for Rise in map number 1.
Respecting our time, Rise 5-0 victory over Oxygen. And I need to see a little bit more from you guys. I truly do. You dominated challenges, you dominated relegation, but what can you do in Pro League? You've had some close series, but I'm ready for you to take a map, and I'm ready for you to take a series. But again, we need to see more. Hey, good job for Rise 5-0 victory. They're feeling good. Vascar's coming up next. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody, to Gears Pro League Day 3. Fresh start. Well, almost fresh start, right? It's Phase 2. We've already seen Phase 1 play out, and we're now seeing a different Rise come out, right? Much different than we've seen in Phase 1. They are looking much better, much more confident. I should say here in what, week 2? Because they did lose to Rebel after all. But I got to say, again, I'm a huge fan of switching up Franchise for Rushiez in that 1v spots. It happened here on Harbor. It's not going to happen as much on Vascar per se, right? Because, you know, everything is so fluid, everything is moving as much as it is. But I do expect to see it a little bit more into the future. But it does pay dividends. They win 5-0. That is a massive victory.
Yeah, that's going to be a big victory. That's a momentum start, and that's how you really propel yourself to take that mid portion of the season as serious as ever. And honestly, I just want to go ahead and say it. It's not necessarily a mechanical skill difference between Rushiez and Franchise. It's those thoughts, those rotations, those steps, left instead of right, wall bouncing instead of strafing, those little differences that go down to each individual player that I really think puts Rushiez in towards the spot that makes Rise a little bit better. That's what I'm saying. You can have the same roster. This roster could be as successful as ever. It's putting those players into where their strengths matter most, and putting Rushiez into those chaotic fights to where to throw a smoke, get loose in this game, possibly throw a flash and get loose, staying alive in between a shock and an instant. Rushiez is the style of player that I would want there. There was a reason back in Gears of War 4 when we had the All-Star game where I was one of the captains that he was my number 2 draft pick. And if honestly, I would think about putting him as my number 2 draft pick as well in Gears of War 5 if we had another All-Star game.
I mean, look, he's a champion, right? I mean, he literally is a champion. Don't forget those multi-time champion. But I mean, you look at you know, the first 2 events. What is San Diego and Mexico? He was able to take over there with reciprocity. I mean, hey, this is a big roster, and I think again that's why we've been so critical about Rise. You know, and we've wanted them to become those that championship caliber squad that we expected them to be. At one point, they were the most hyped up team. They had some good success too when they first started, but I think over time they've just kind of slowly been you know, kind of falling off, getting a little bit worse here and there. But who knows? This could be a big turning point, and I truthfully hope it is. As Vasgar goes around, though, this is going to be Rise's map pick. They currently lead 1-0. It's a best-of-3 series, everybody. All matches tonight will be a best-of-3, which means Rise is 1 map away from defeating Oxygen 2-0 and bettering their Pro League record. We'll see if they can do it, but currently we have a bit of a standstill, and Abolics looking to hold down Tank.
Seems to be a big push coming through from Franchise. I don't think Oxygen was necessarily ready. That flash did not go far enough for Oxygen, so Rise and Franchise were able to stay a little bit longer, maybe a little bit too long, trying to put those extra shots down. Revive's going to be there. Zoom takes out Avexys. Rushiez able to get one before getting taken down. It does look like Rise bites off more than they can chew. all around the map except for Icy. He's gonna be that last shining hope. You see the hills being overtaken. Triple cap domination will sound out for a moment here. Icy will get taken down, trying to make a little bit of a cheeky play, but he bought his team some time there as Avexys spawns up, goes straight towards their home mill, and gets a little bit of an anchor. This is gonna be the footing they need to stay in this round.
And hopefully they will stay in this round. This is a big lead for them. And one of the things Oxygen has been struggling with is holding on to their defensive setup once they have it. We witnessed that in Harbor for the majority of the time, and we might see it again. Rushiez, great shot, good movement. That's going to be Rocky falling down. Rocky, no easy feat to get through. On the other side, though, Zoom and Morality, they're going to bully Avexys, lead him and stagger him to go ahead and bleed out, and that's going to keep Oxygen up with the 2-1. The objective starting to get away from Rise. They're trying to recover. Rushiez a very curious spot going mid. Lancer out, nothing he can do. He's going to be finished off, and that's going to put these two other members, players 6 and 8, in a tough spot because they could potentially get pinched here, and you can already see 6 falling, and probably 8 is going to be gone as well. That's going to be Icy, and it's just going to be hard for him to stay up here.
It definitely is. Luckily, there is some reinforcements coming through. This is the Oxygen spawn, and Rise knows all these players will spawn back up, so they can play around in their spawn. They can try to push up, land some shots like you see they're doing. Icy taking a ton of damage. Reinforcements are there. I don't think that was anybody close. Franchise gets taken out. Rushiez falls as well. Avexys, the last member there. 4 players dead at the end of this one for Rise. Oxygen going to be able to tie this one up. 1 round apiece. And honestly, I saw Rushiez in the middle there for a moment, and I always think about this when I'm looking at Vascar. You know those hop downs? If those just weren't there, similar to how King of the Hill was, I think certain players that have those sneaky tendencies, that get those sneaky kills, would shine on this map a lot more. You'd see a lot more of those rotational plays, and I honestly think you'd see a lot more shotgun battles go through, at least shoddy, sneaky plays if those were down. So I think that would utilize that middle, and honestly, you'd see some big weapons go down, but that's neither here nor there. It's just obviously what I think about when I see players, particularly in this situation, Rushiez in towards that center.
Yeah, you know, I know you've been chomping at the bit for a big power weapon in Greater. I have too personally. It's hard to put it in 4v4, but you're right. Maybe if you do open it up a little bit more, it makes it more viable to kind of rotate through. But then again, I think that would put the objective work in kind of chaos. Like, you know, it's just a short shot over towards C, you know, over towards B. So who knows? I mean, either way, it is an interesting thought for sure, and obviously would be a big change. Who knows if it's going to be coming. Oxygen with that 1-0 lead, and that's got to feel good. That was a clean round, Jacob. There was really nothing negative to take away from that in terms of Oxygen.
Wow. I was saying on the other side of the map, B, I was loving their aggression to go and take the other side of the map. That way they can capture the hill. But on the other side of the map at A, they're able to trap these players out, get both of them down, getting a little bit over aggressive. And now the triple cap domination possibility is there. Morality has to go big. He gets one, gets some damage on the second one, but Icy shuts it down. And with that elimination, it is going to be the round for Rise as they sneak it through in under 45 seconds. And it all started, that tank fight, like I said, those 2 players, usually it's 3 players versus 3, sometimes 3 players versus 2 to get that footing. But on their bad side, Rise pushed all the way across, took those bottom half of those stairs. That way Icy can go in the hill and cap for free. Anybody pushed up, they would have been met with a battle. The Rise already taking it to Oxygen Esports, and that's what you got to do, especially if you're looking to be one of those elite teams. You have to win these style of matchups. On the other side, though, Oxygen, if you want to be taken seriously, you got to beat these teams like Rise, who are known to struggle. You
absolutely do. I mean, this right here is a matchup that, for me, I felt could have the potential to be quite even. I really do. But then again, Rise is really stepping it up, and I'm seeing a different look from them tonight as previously. And I got to say, this look here, if I would have seen this in week number 1, I would have said no contest. You know, Oxygen's going to get beat up. But again, what I seen in week number 1, Rise was struggling. Now here in week number 2, especially after Harbor, I'm thinking to myself, I don't know, maybe much like E United. You know, E United was struggling a little bit during phase 1, but after mid-split playoffs, they've been that championship roster caliber team you expect them to be. And I don't want to count my chickens before they hatch, but Rise might be there too. But then again, like you mentioned, that tank fight has to go a bit better. And Abolics is at the forefront for that, man. Abolics is the guy to really make some magic happen. And Icy is letting him know with the thumb across the throat, I'm coming for you, baby. I'm going to take you out. You better be ready whenever I do decide to full send it.
It's interesting to see about some of these teams, though, too. It's in some cases. Hold on, let's put a pin in that one. You see the push coming through from Rise. Instantly stuffed. Franchise going down. Abolics met with that retro from, I do believe that might have been Rushiez to see Rise. They're taking control of this tank. Multiple downs going through, but no eliminations being cleaned up. And that's 2 eliminations for Rise. Fran and Icy are able to get some kills. Rocky doing what he can. He did take out Rushiez, but he was met with his own demise as well. So Rise finding a way once again on their bad side to push through and take control of that tank.
And that was just great chain revives from Rise. You've seen Abolics getting those early pokes, getting the early damage, and he just couldn't get the finishes, though, unfortunately. And Rise, they're swarming together, they're playing together, and that's what they need to do in order to beat these Oxygen boys. Vex is kind of isolated by himself. He's going to be a lone wolf for the time being, but the rest of the troops are coming up through those steps, and that's going to give Avexys a little bit of confidence to push up, but Abolics picks up 1. Rocky, though, is going to get chunked in the end. Abolics now is going to be there to try and fight off a couple, but it won't happen. That's 3 gone. Zoom now forced to throw utility, going for a touch, but it's not going to happen.
2-1. Rise being able to chain this together, and honestly, I wish we can have like an actual listen and compare to how their matches are going early on and some of their losses compared to how it's going now. I can almost guarantee a change in atmosphere coming through for this Rise squad. 2-1. Yes, it's not over just yet. Oxygen could strike back, but it does look like it's just a whole new Rise. And honestly, it looks like it's at a flip of a switch almost. Like you can see when Vanquish suddenly was just the dominant team in the league, when E United, like you talked about from mid-split on, it almost doesn't even look like they gradually got better. It just looked like they woke up and were just one of the best teams in the game. And right now, it just looks like Rise woke up today and say, hey, we're going to play some competitive gears.
Yeah, I mean, because at a certain point, we didn't know if Fran was even going to play, if Drix was going to replace him, right? So for Fran to be playing again, it's pretty inspiring. 6'3", 3 deaths to his name. He was a big influential factor in Harbor, playing that 1v spot on Bravo. He was holding it down for his roster. And even now, you know, leading it in terms of slaying category, taking that early spot up there where, you know, one player that I love to highlight in this spot is TJ. I think TJ plays this spot so well for Hive, and Fran is going to be up there trying to not even emulate, but just do it a little bit different. And I think that's a fair assessment. That's going to put Abolics back. Morality can't push up either because he's got to be careful. It's so hard to push Fran from that position. You might lose your life, and obviously that's not what they want. But on the other side, though, Zoom, he's not worried at all. He takes down Rushiez, he takes down Avexys, and that's going to secure the A-Hill. So Oxygen is going to have the 2-1. Rise needs to react.
But I do like right here, you can kind of see it. Members that arrive that are over towards that B side of the map, or at least for that time being, they didn't move. They didn't falter. They knew because Oxygen had to have traveled through their respawn and the amount of time it took, they would just simply be sandwiching themselves, especially since 2 hills to 1. There's almost no point for Oxygen to overextend, even to get the eliminations if they wanted. But already you see the adjustments made. Now that Rise has their footing, I see backtracking. We're going to have 3 players try to rush over here. This is the time to do it. Morality is on rotation. You have to be careful for that cross coming through the middle. Pushing them back this top side is going to be the goal. And what even better to have happen than to get the eliminations. Both Rocky and Zoom will find themselves on respawn. Morality trying to backtrack. They know they need to get this hill to keep 2 hills in their hands, under their control. And you see the backtrack coming through with Avexys. They want to get their hills for Rise, but this is going to be a big battle. Abolics getting taken out here opens things up for Rise here to gain the lead.
Yeah, Franchis is by himself. There was a great Lancer, I believe, from Icy to take down Morality, but Abolics was able to take down Fran, put himself in a tough spot, 1v2, but he did everything he could possibly do in that position. Unfortunately, he ended up dying off, and now, obviously, Rise does have the 2-1, so all that effort from Fran to kind of stay up, his teammates to push in and apply that pressure onto Morality and Abolics, it was all worth it, and that should give Rise the lead very shortly. They already have the win condition after all, and this is going to put Oxygen now in a, once again, a tough spot to try and retake a hill. And it seems as if they're going to push Icy and Rushiez. If they can stop this push, that should all but solidify this round for Rise. And especially Cherry on top of Vex is going to go ahead and pick up that fresh shock. So that's going to make the job even harder for Morality and Abolics to push up.
As I say, Oxygen needs to be on the same page here. Instead, they go for man-to-man into 2 different cross angles. As soon as that first down comes through, Rushiez immediately switches to a shotgun, trying to take out Abolics, but he took too much damage early on. Abolics actually winning this fight. He's actually able to take this 1v2. But it comes too late into this one, along with his teammates losing the other side of the map. So Rise will hold on to that 3-1. But I wanted to say that one early on. Oxygen, because of that setup with the Lancers on that side of the map, they needed to attack together. They needed to be ready to chain revive to come through. And then they push forward, get the elimination, stagger the deaths from there. But because they went for a man-to-man, both Avexys, I do believe that was in that position, along with Rushiez, were able to target out that first player, get the down, and then that's where you see them both kind of switch to their shotguns to try to 2v1 that other member and not give up those easy kills. And that's exactly what you got to do in Rise's situation, but that's exactly what not to do in Oxygen's situation.
And Abolics did everything he could do, but at that point, you know, he needed his other teammates on the other side of the map to win their fights, and they're simply not. And it's not like they're doing anything wrong. It's one of these situations where I feel Oxygen is putting themselves in good spots. They're just simply not winning the engagements once they're there. And a big portion of that is because Rise is doing a great job getting the chain revives. They're doing a great job dancing around and just overall, I think, just winning their fights, hitting their shots. That's, I mean, come on, that's you know, Gears 101. And Rise is just doing, I think, a better job than that of Oxygen at this point. Good early lead for Rise so far, but you see already Rocky and Zoom looking to apply that pressure, get the decap and the full cap over on the hill just across the way on E. Big fight on to Tank, though. Morality and Abolics are going to be backing off, and I see Fran, as well as the rest of the cavalry from Rise, are going to be looking to push them back and take that 2-1 back in their favor. But before long, though, Fran is going to, or excuse me, Rushiez is going to have some company.
Avexys trying to be sneaky. He took a big shot there. I don't think anybody's there to follow up from Oxygen, but you see the over rotation on the other side of the map. It seems like Oxygen like to play in a lot of these 2-2 splits, trying to overtake the hill, but I need to see them stay on the same page, because the situation, the setup is going to be rather similar. They have to be on the same page. They're going to take a lot of free damage, a lot of Lancer fire as soon as they push up to try to take this control. So they need to be ready for these chain revives and almost have to be ready for a shotgun battle immediately after. The first flash going out, and honestly, that's going to be a waste of a flash. They're not pushing up on it. That's a blunder, a waste of utility. And on the other side of the map, you can already see Oxygen. They're trying to take these little inches, little by little. Icy putting that damage out to come through. Decap is going to be successful, but a down coming through. Icy's able to get morality. You see Rise trying to push up, trying to solidify these eliminations, but those chain revives that I talked about are coming through for Oxygen.
Yeah, and the chain revive is going to be big. That's something I was complimenting Rise on just a little bit earlier. They continue to do that. This could be their round, and very shortly it might be. Franchis walks right in. Unfortunately, both Rushiez and Fran will lose their life, and that's going to be an Oxygen round, locking it in. It was looking scary for a little bit, but hey, if they continue to play like that, they should be all right. One round away from tying it up.
Yep, and this is where you can kind of see it. Back and forth battle, back and forth. And usually when we see these back and forth battles, that big weapon doesn't go down, or at least not just yet. That's where you can kind of see that Botox. You got to see a retro come down from both of these teams. But I will give the upper hand to Rise so far, because it's usually on their bad side that they can be able to attack. They can push forward and they can take over that tank side and take it away from Oxygen. The only thing is there's no hill this time. There's no weapon over there. So I don't think that's going to be a strategy that they put towards the forefront.
Might not be. I would like to see that, though, personally, just to see how that kind of develops the engagements off the rip. But so far, none of that to be the case yet. What are we going to do here? I said, okay, so we're going to put the retro there. That's what I thought. So we got the retro shock and an instant on the other side. The shock, very beneficial, right, for just keeping them off of the FO. And I think more importantly for maybe not so much on this side for Rise, but especially on the next side, if they do decide to keep that shock. That's going to pin Abolics and maybe even Morality if they decide to take that position currently where Fran is at, right on tank. That's going to pin him back and should allow them to push up a little bit more comfortably. But we won't get that as of yet. We'll just have the incense so far, which I think are going to have more of an impact. And that's going to be the hands of Abolics. Let's see what he can do with it a little bit later on. But for now, of course, it is going to be at a little bit of a standstill.
This is where, in these situations, it's like a chess match. You don't want to make the wrong move. You don't want to get a little too aggressive. You see them switching these positionings here. They're trying to put that Rushiez with that retro over towards the top to have a clear line of sight onto that neutral to make it a little bit easier for him to down, even if he is left all by himself. And this is where Avexys is going to switch on over to that flex position. You're going to see he's pushing down towards that low. He's going to be that player that backs up, possibly rotates as well. But look at Rushiez. They're getting ready to make a move. They have a flash grenade. They have a shock grenade. They can take control.
It absolutely could, and I think he's going to go in and send it to the right side, and he will. That's going to force Rocky out of positioning, and Rushiez has that retro. Should be able to help out, but great team fire, though, from Rocky and Zoom, and the shock actually misses. It was just behind them, so they didn't really even have to move. That's an unfortunate placement, and that's going to force Rise now to put one more player to go for this attack, and they didn't want to do that. I don't think they intended to do that, but with the missed shock, they were forced to do that.
That was a massive missed opportunity there for Rise. And this is where you got to aim those grenades. You got to practice them. Go into a private, figure out how to get it behind the cover, because that's such a common cover for people to sit on. You see teams stack up there time and time again, and now they lose Icy because of it. So yeah, you did get that capture. You got a little bit of a lead, but look what it cost you. It cost you multiple lives. Avexys gets taken down. Rushiez gets taken down. Big double kill coming out from Morality. And Oxygen, they survived the trap, and they capitalize on a mistake from Rise. And that is one of the biggest things I always talk about. Something as simple as throwing and winding up a shock grenade, winding up that instant could really make the difference. And that's why I kind of shouted out something so simple from Penny of United last week. I do believe it was how you do that perfect shock behind the cover, because you kind of test that. You know each and every inch a player is safe, so that way when you want to force them to a certain spot, you can do so correctly.
And I think that's a fair assessment. It truly is. And, you know, those ensigns, those shocks, they need to be locked up. Because, again, this fight would have been much different. I think Rise could have won that if they forced Rocky and Morality out of positioning, or Zoom, excuse me. But it is what it is. Round number 2, here we go. Rocky and Zoom held it down before. Let's see if they can replicate that success again. And you notice Rise is going to send a third member over there. But great connection on the ensign. Morality will take down Avexys. That brings it to a 3v2 now, I should say, as Oxygen will have the med advantage. 2 is actually going to rotate. 6 is going to be challenged onto Abolics. That's Fran, and Abolics a big spot to hold it down. But of course, they send one more player over. That's Morality. He's keeping his head on a swivel, rotating through the map, doing exactly what he needs to do. Oxygen is playing this very well, but even so, they still are not out of the woods just yet. Rise, if they can take E, they'll be okay, but Rocky takes down Rushiez. Icy is backing up, and I think Oxygen just locked in around.
Say, barring any miracles coming through, you see the overextension trying to attack the other side of the map. But even if this one comes through, because of how long it's going to take to decap and cap the hill, it's just simply not going to be enough time. But honestly, Rushiez, he's pushing over. It sounded like I was giving him hope there for a second, because honestly, as I looked up at the clock, there might have been a few seconds left on the clock, but nobody in position. And Oxygen's going to win 2 straight rounds and tie it up. And it honestly, it came down to the difference in the usage of utility. You saw a massive miss, and I say it's a massive miss because they had so much time to wind it up, throw it in the perfect spot, and get the characters where they wanted to be. They didn't even shock anybody. They didn't even scare anybody on the side of Oxygen, and that kind of allowed Oxygen not only to stay in that positioning, but return fire with a perfect incident of their own. They got Avexys off, and even though they didn't push up in that scenario, that allowed them to get the extra man to rotate back to get Franchis off, because Franchis was getting that decap. That would have been a huge difference maker to come through, and because of Oxygen having that extra man, they put a stop. That was great defensive plays coming through. Nothing exciting, I'll say. That was nothing exciting, but it was great defensive stop. Absolutely. Great strategies and a great IGL to control the team.
Yeah, that was Rocky and Zoom holding it down. Morality hitting his incense, and Morality also being that flex player to kind of go back and forth, give that additional man on E for Oxygen, and also help the Oxygen members who were kind of pushing over to take over on D, right? To force that 1v2 against Fran. That was just some of the great guidance of troops, if you will, and that speaks volumes about Oxygen at this point. That's 2 in a row. They now tie it up 3-3, and Abolics has nowhere to go. He's just going to go in and go through the fire, and flames burn to a Chris. Icy, though, continues to push forward, and he's hitting every shot. Rise understands this round is incredibly important, and they're looking to lock it in very shortly. Avexys, good Lancer. This is possible now with that player going down. Abolics now needs to get a touch. He can't. And man, if Avexys the hero there. Again, lancering out that player. He had ample time from Oxygen to get onto that hill, but because Avexys knocks him down, Abolics was just a bit too far away, and Rise would lock in the domination very quickly. No suspense at all. Exciting stuff. 4-3, 1 round away from taking the series.
And since the rounds I like to see more of from Rise, you know, when you allow the other team, not necessarily allow, but when the other team does win 2 consecutive rounds, they chain together momentum. You just put a stop to it, and you do so in a fashion to where as soon as you have that opening, you just attack. And you kind of saw it there. You saw multiple members push up in an aggressive fashion coming through from Rise. Even though the down did come in, nobody wasted time from Oxygen to get that revive, because Morality knew if he stayed to get that revive, we're all dead. Then this round is certainly out the window, even though the result did not change. Rise now on series point, ready to take this matchup.
And the disables for both teams come out. The shocks will no longer be in play, so the instants are just going to be there. And quite honestly, that really doesn't have a big impact so far, given the fact that we've seen the shocks not play as much of an impact as they should be playing. The instants have been more instrumental, and in terms of their connections, there's going to be a great one. Fran is going to drop off. Avexys can't push up, and that's going to be a free cap for the boys of Oxygen. Meanwhile, on the other side, though, it is going to be some pressure onto D. Rocky looking to hold his own. I believe that's going to be Zoom right next to him. Rocky will fall. Zoom now goes in for the pickup. Can't make it happen. He's chunked. And that's going to be a great break for Rise. They'll keep the 2-1.
I what Rush was doing there. Didn't immediately kill that second player. He wants to space out their deaths, give them a few seconds of opportunity to breathe without that player spawning up. And now Abolics back up against the wall, unable to push forward. Triple cap domination sounding off. Somebody else gets a chance. He falls all the same. That was going to be Zoom. Rocky, 1v2 scenario. This is going to be for the round. He gets taken out. Morality, all hopes and dreams out the window as Rise solidify this round and take the series 2-0.
And very well done. You know, that's got to make them feel good. Truthfully, it really does. Now they better their Pro League record. I think the only loss they currently have is to Rebel. So now they're going to be 2-1 in overall standings. And it really is night and day in terms of their performance from phase 1 now over towards phase 2 of split 2. You got to love it. You have to love what you're seeing. And again, they're making adjustments. They're looking stronger. Franchise now playing the 1v spots on Harbor. He was instrumental in that success. Fran obviously clutching up as he traditionally does, playing that tank side, and even sometimes holding down the opposite home hill. Maybe even those big 1v2 spots, he was doing his work. And you know, Rushiez, we've been very critical on him, but because he's able to just, you know, get loose, as you like to say, he's performing well. I mean, he's slaying out. That's something that we've seen from Rush in 5v5 days, and it's refreshing to see it come into play in 4v4.
Yeah, and you can also see it if you date back to those 5v5 days. He wasn't necessarily going a massive amount of positive. He didn't have that 2.0 KD, but he was able to take it to the other team. Not only was he able to get those crucial eliminations on enemy team territory, but he also forced multiple members back. So not only was he getting the kills, buying his team some time, the time that he bought his team was for those 3 members to get positioning, to get the hills around the map. And that's kind of a little glimpse of what we saw already here with Rushiez being in toward the front spawn, especially on a map like Harbor. He opened up round after round for that team of Rise to be able to gain that lead, even if he was only getting a down, if he was getting a chunk. In one of those rounds, he got all 3 kills, which opened up massive amounts of opportunities for Rise to gain that aggressional advantage over Oxygen.
And let's talk about Oxygen a little bit, though, right? Because I feel like this whole series, we were just, you know, kind of breaking down Rise, the struggles they've had, how they're looking better, but we didn't really talk about Oxygen too much. But what are some strong things, I guess, from Oxygen? Not necessarily in Harbor, obviously, not a lot to take away from that. Truthfully, I didn't really see any star players. How could you have a star player given the fact that you lose 5-0? But Vascar a little bit closer, 5-3. It's respectable. They were in it. And at one point, you know, they chained together 2 rounds in a row. They tied up 3-3. Obviously, Rise then wins the next 2 rounds to cap it out at 5-3, win the series 2-0. But for a good portion of this map here on Vascar, they were looking relatively strong, Jacob.
Yeah, you can kind of see it, like the shock and fight, that aggressive style of play, which kind of won them and dominated that challenger seed and got them to spot into the Pro League. It's just unfortunate when you go up a team that has that historic attribute on their side, you're playing their strategy. On Oxygen, you're going to have to develop that next level play, or you force that big weapon down. So I saw a lot of shock and fights won. In this moment, you can kind of see them using that Lancer fight, that teamwork. But when it came to those big moments, those big team fights and those big rotations to come through, they were just one step behind. But honestly, even though they did lose pretty heavily over towards this Rise squad, I do think this is just another learning lesson for them. They need to be able to take this and fuel them for more, because Rise, they're not the cream of the crop just yet. The test has not just been given yet. And honestly, you're not in last place just yet, so you don't have anything to worry about just yet. Maybe you might have a little bit. Maybe anything's the wrong word.
Well, you know, the only thing that I'm happy for, grateful for, is the fact that we don't get to see Asylum, at least for Rise. But it could have been pretty scary if Oxygen does with Vascar, because I know at the beginning I said Training Grounds, you know, was the close one. It actually wasn't. During E-Days when Rise and Oxygen played against each other back when they were Mars, not last week, but the week prior. Rise was able to win Training Grounds 5-0, but Oxygen had that 4-1 lead on Asylum, right? And they looked great. They really did. But then all of a sudden, Rise was able to come back and then win at 5-4. But again, that shows if it does go to map 3, which of course it's not going to be with Rise taking a 2-0 victory, things could have got a bit dicey and shaky. But thank goodness it doesn't get to that point, and Rise can just, you know, close it out a bit easier 2-0. But Oxygen could have had a very real chance there. When they were tied 3-3 on Vascar, they just would have continued to hammer it home. They could have been all right. But hey, it is what it is. What it could have, should have, as Blaze likes to say. We are now at the point where our first series is over with Jacob. Rise, they are the victors, and, you know, they are feeling pretty solid. But coming